Hello and welcome to another episode of Frame and Reference. I'm your host, Kenny McMillan, and you're listening to episode 136 with Sherri Kauk, DP of Drugstore June. Enjoy. Have you been watching anything cool recently?
That's such a fun question. The podcast, The Camera, I discovered it just a few weeks ago. And then I dropped into Chicago to the Shy just a bit ago to do some additional DP work for the Shy. This is the moment my puppy has decided to eat that bone I put down an ounce. I will remove it from her choice of activities for a moment. So I dropped into the Shy. Christian Herrera is the main DP. But the AOP is, in fact, the cam op from the podcast. So I did, I did some quick deep diving because I had just kind of heard it and listened to it a little bit, and then that's so exciting. So I'm a big podcaster, and then of course Barbenheimer this last year just took it over, and I just love that this is the exact opposite filmmaking possibilities. So that to me was just an experience of a generation. Give me one moment to handle my off-screen travel dog. I'm on the road. Hey, Coco, I love you so much. I'm going to take this from you for an hour. There we go. That's got to be confusing for an animal. He just gave it to me.
Right. I suppose that's the advantage of having cats.
Probably so, yeah. So, I mean, I don't know. Has anything like Oppenheimer and Barbie happened like that? Like what did that happen before? The past of filmmaking is phenomenal.
Yeah, I thoroughly. I'm hoping that the studio. It's too early to tell, but I'm hoping that the studio's got the message like, oh, people just like good movies and make their own fun, and not. Like, hey, try to turn that marketing, like the marketers didn't do that. We did that as viewers. We just enjoyed that. You can't strike, lightning can't strike twice there. Just don't try. Just make good movies.
I mean, it is true. We do love a good biopic. So Oppenheimer, right on point. But you're right. I feel like there's already like the Gummy Bear movie coming, or, like the Tricycle, whatever.
Right.
The Lumba movie's coming probably. I hope they don't do that as well.
Yeah, Mattel. I mean, do you remember that movie Battleship?
No, what was this one? I mean, I love Battleship. I'm so glad I missed it. Maybe.
Oh man, so it was.
Great.
I couldn't tell you
what
year it was.
Great.
So it had a good idea. I'll say the execution.
Did they have autonomous decision, or did they somehow get placed on their grid?
Aliens. So aliens shoot from above, and I will say, to their credit, the aliens shot missiles that looked like the pegs.
Okay.
So that was fun. The execution maybe, maybe too many cooks in the kitchen or something, but it was a good idea.
I don't know if it was Margot or Greta who said in an LA Times interview, like, there are a million bad Barbie movies we could have made.
Sure.
And there was like the one little bullseye that we were aiming for, like the one good one. And at some point you just go for it and you see, but it truly was. And I think both films landed because it's absolute detail oriented, specifics to like those details that matter. Like the classic joke when Barbie realized like, oh my gosh, I need to see a gynecologist. I didn't know I had one. Or like Oppenheimer, just down to the details of building that world and realizing like, oh my gosh, there was nothing there. and the bringing to life like, oh, Albert Einstein was in the world and on the local campus. That to me was like, what? So it sure, make all of the biopics or all of the cartoons that we grew up with or dolls we grew up with, but like, you have to just know the world and bring all of that out. That to me is what makes it like something above and beyond that really plays into us.
Yeah, it is. I suppose if you're not like super super history buff might be going a little far, but if you're not quite paying attention, I'm sure it's easy to think that Albert Einstein was 300 years, like Picasso. People think Picasso is like a Renaissance painter, and you're like, no, that dude died in the 90s or something. Like,
yeah, totally true, exactly.
But yeah, both of those films I thoroughly enjoyed. Also, the fun thing about no one dressed up like Oppenheimer, but you go into the theater and having everyone dressed up in their pink and stuff, and like they were getting really that was enjoyable. That's the thing that I think theaters need to focus on more, is like getting the experience side of it kind of nailed. Like if you can't go to the Dolby version or whatever with the nice seats and stuff, I think people get like, it immediately feels cheap. The normal seating, the normal experience should not be the cheap seats. It needs to be like Dolby is the normal experience, and then there's something that not 4X or 4XD or whatever that's called out. Maybe that's too far, but just
I did hear, which I think sounds like a complete disaster, but I would totally want to experience. It's a movie house with a playground in it for the kids. I don't know. I mean,
in the theater,
I was a mother in the theater, so I guess your kid could be watching the movie and screaming and running, but okay, that's something. But who is of course, Taylor Swift. All the Swifties that dress to impress, to get to that cinema, the concert cinema,
right?
The concert film. That to me also, it's like the event. It becomes about a group experience again. Barbie fans dressing up, is Barbie or Ken or whomever. Like it really, that's what cinema can be again, is really dressing up. And sure, we could all work on our Oppenheimer, look.
Right.
So, wow. Our Oppie look.
We all need to find cool hats and very short ties. I've also noticed that all the old films, to get it right, you need a tie that's about that long.
Yeah.
I did want to. What's funny is I saw that you were the DP on The Inspectors, and I went to college with Brett Green.
Oh, great! Wait, what college was this?
Arizona State.
Arizona State. What is it like when you knew Brett then, and he knew you? Like, do you guys have a sense at the time because college, you both are probably in film, headed towards that direction, or what is the world like then?
From what I remember, like I could also be confused. Like, so we weren't like super great friends, but ASU's an enormous school, so it's oftentimes I will get people mixed up with who I've met here and there. But I'm pretty sure we went to college together. I should text him or something, but no, I think the film school, I think he got a degree in like public relations or something, but the film school was brand new. This was 2008. It had started in 2006. So we very much felt like latchkey kids. And to see anyone succeed like, he did, is not shocking, but is like, oh, fuck, he made it, like,
yeah,
it doesn't feel out of the realm of possibility, but it is, exciting.
It is exciting. Just again, when I was on the Shy just a bit ago, I showed up it was a courtroom set, and there was an actress that I went to introduce myself to, and she said her name, Charmin, and I said, Charmin from The Inspectors, and then she kind of double took me, and we both went, ah! Because a decade later, however many years later, it is exciting because our trajectories could be so long term, and also just maneuvering, and there's very little things that are direct in this industry. And so when you do run into someone, or Jean Eli, he had a role in Insecure, and then I just saw him on a trailer, and I shot with him on one of his first produced short films, and so we catch up with each other sometimes. And I just saw him on a trailer for another TV series. You're just like, yeah. It's really exciting. That's really exciting. We pick our film schools. We have no idea, but inevitably, yes, we're picking the school, but we're also sort of picking the mindset and the people that we interact with, and sort of, measure ourselves as we measure each other, as, we're all growing and figuring it out. But film school it's like this beautiful, I went to AFI, and I would call it less beautiful, more like running a gauntlet. But the longer I've have survived it and am outside of the event, the 2-year event, it's this fascinating experience where you have a group of focused, like-minded individuals in an intense environment, and you just can't help but either reacting to that, and you either form the bond or you sort of form a friction. But you definitely get an opinion of each other and an ability to work with each other out of a need because you're crewing a film, or just because out of respect or curiosity. And that process to me of film school, and whether it's undergrad or graduate, it's formidable, and it's created some of the relationships that have really, if I look back, made those step up connections that I needed, whether they were lateral, whether vertical, like those. A lot of those come from film school connections.
Yeah, well, and AFI especially, like a lot of people, go to SC or perhaps UCLA, NYU. Plenty of folks from there. For whatever reason, Maria Rushka pops into my head. She taught there, but she's my age, But some of the best DPs in the world all seem to have gone to AFI. So I know you're in great company, but tell me, and I've asked them all this, so it's kind of maybe a boring question for anyone who listens to the podcast a lot, but you kind of went into it there about it being a gauntlet, but what are some of the things that you think you learned specifically from AFI that maybe a traditional university or film school maybe wouldn't have given you?
Sure. I think what makes...
You went to Ithaca as well, right?
I went to Ithaca College too, which was brilliant for me. It was the most positive, mind-opening, creative experience, supportive. It was really heavy in leadership with women, the professors, and a lot of the filmmaking crew that I ended up with. So I just sort of came into filmmaking thinking was 50-50 at least, if not more, balance and equity, that sort. But then I had a culture shock into welcome to Hollywood reality. But so I think what makes the film school, whether it's in my case Ithaca or AFI, or I think of the Rhode Island School of Arts or Savannah, all of them, is who's teaching at that time when you're there. That really makes the culture, but it also makes the craft of the individual. And it sort of, culture-wise, determines if this is going to be a group that bonds together or has a similar language. I think what makes AFI so powerful is that we come out of it as filmmakers over the course of a decade of years with the same language. We are fluent in a type of visual storytelling and a type of approach to lighting and really pondering where the lens goes and what kind of lens it is. And I see a difference. It's interesting to me that many of the cinematographers that are thriving right now, I'm always curious to see, did you come from the Polish film school, European cinema? Did you come from Asian cinema? Did you come from Hollywood Western, Western filmmaking style? It's different approaches for sure, and that kind of getting into the details of just coverage style. Do you hold a frame longer? Do you punch in for coverage? Do you just let it play out? These are approaches to filmmaking that are defined by the people inside the kind of filmmaking schools. Or if you're looking more of like a craft or trades, who did you learn from? The Roger Deakins approach is way different from the Maddie Batik approach. Where and how did that become their kind of mode into it? So the more and more I am working, I would say when I first came, it was like I have to go to the best school. I went to Ithaca because it could get me to the coasts, whether it was East or West. And because I thought they had the best film environment for me to drop into. And I went to AFI because I thought it was the best cinematography. But as I've been in the industry longer, it's really about, when I look back, who were the people that were there? Stephen is, I think, still the head of the AFI program. It's those connections that Bill Dill, he's the renowned instructor there, and some of the other film schools.
He's been name dropped.
People know
times on this.
He's been name dropped because he is one of those multi-year filmmakers, ASU cinematographers, who have instilled in us a language. And so as I'm moving through my career, and AFIers, Sandra Volde, Paolo Hidobro, they've given me opportunities to step onto their sets, but I speak the same language. And it's so that to me is what a type of film school does, but it's really about the filmmakers who are teaching the film programs. create for an entire culture generation. FSU, Florida State, they have their own thing going, and they've got this cool group that can also, intermix and make films that we weren't expecting. They have a good culture.
Yeah, the for younger people or current students, I think or anyone kind of interested in getting into film, the film school question always comes up. And exactly as you said, I always say, like, it's less about what you learn there and more about who you meet, because you can meet really cool people like Brett Green. But
he is so cool. I love
very nice man.
I love keeping up. We've run into each other just a few times as well. So.
Yeah, very handsome. But real easy to shoot. Great photographer too, by the way. Great headshots and stuff. But point being, it feels, when I went to film school, and I'm sure this was the case with you, like the proliferation of information was not around. The internet was not a source for, there were like the cinematography.com forum, I think, existed. Maybe, you had DVX user later in life, but like in general, it was, DVD special features and American Cinematographer magazine. That was it. And now you can learn strictly from the internet the hard details and the interpersonal stuff. Film school kind of, unless you're going to work immediately on a set, you kind of do need that.
Yeah, and there's such a distance from the beginner to, dare I say, like, the master, right? But it's also sort of exponential as well. You can make sort of a sense of rapid growth, big stages at the beginning, because it's just like more general. But as you get deeper and deeper into a craft, it really becomes about the specificity of your choices. For example, I'm on a non-scripted docuseries right now, second unit DPing, and I at once went and shot on the Shy. 80% the same lighting equipment. So that's not the difference, but it was the difference in the diffusion we used. It was the difference in the focal lengths we had an option to. On the Shy, we had the options of the 30 mil because of the Tico visions. We could go 35, 30, or 28. Here we have a different set of lenses, or we just have a zoom lens. So it actually gets into the nitty gritty. So you might feel like my strides of advancement or whatever are not as large, but it really comes down to the detail. And that's how, as you're building with your film school group and you're staying in touch and people are finding what really moves them, hopefully you're also fine tuning not just what moves yourself, but also like, how do you use the tools? It's always fun to debate at Arri versus Sony versus Red, right? But you can do magical things with all of them, but it really gets into the detail of what can you like. Why did you shoot nighttime exteriors with an ND6? Why did you go down to base 800 versus 3200? It's like those little decisions are actually what start to define a person's style of communication, I guess, visually.
Sure. Yeah. And it's also, I think you brought up a great point that, like, once it was great to hear that articulated, because it does feel like for the strides at the beginning are so, it's the difference between standard def and 4K, but your career,
Yeah.
and then once you hit 4K, you're like, where do I go from here? Nowhere. This is it. All right. Well, guess I got to focus on.
Hey, really a difference?
Yeah.
Make it. I do fall into decision fatigue. I'm the classic, like, I was all HDMIs all the time, but before that, I didn't like HDMI. I was like, they're not perfect enough. And then Nanlux came in, and then Aperture came in, and I was just on set, and we were using a different brand. It'll come to me, but like, so I can suffer from decision fatigue. Like, which one's the best one? And I remember a few years back watching a series of camera tests. It was like, which one's the best? Lighting test, and they brought out a lot of Felix is the other brand. Felix, the Q10s or the Aperture X10s all of them. Of the Nanlux 2.5, like all of them. It's
Cream
so
Source.
wild.
I like Cream Source as well.
Cream Source came to, yeah. But it was so fascinating to me to watch this lighting test, because they had Cineo when they were doing plasma. They had the S6, the Sky Panel S6, these classic. They had several of them. And I can't even remember the one that was deemed technically correct because we had all the graphs. The individuals who tested, they were just perfectly scientific and repetitive in their process that you could actually measure the best. And it was not the S60. The S60 had magenta and even a little bit of green in it. But somehow when you just looked at it, it just felt great. And that really started to free me up because I saw with my own eyes which light was the best. And it was not a light I would choose to use. Well,
yeah.
So I forget what put me there, but yeah, I think it's fascinating.
Well, it doesn't matter what put you there because I'm happy to talk about gear stuff. But I had to learn later in life to care about story more. I was definitely one of the people fascinated with just like the mechanics of stuff. I learned very late in life that I probably should have gotten into props, but I spent 20 years as a cinematographer. So, well, not 20 years as a cinematographer, but like studying it. So I'm stuck here.
What about props? That's so curious. Tell me, that's like what? Left field. Why props?
Because I like making things, like with my hand. I just like, yeah. Well, like carpentry, I think would have been cool for me too. Not necessarily film carpentry, but just like making stuff. But also, I remember. This is actually going to be a good question for you. Like, do you remember the film that got you into film? Because for me, it was like Star Wars and The Matrix. But then I realized I was far more interested. The Matrix maybe isn't the greatest example for this, but like Star Wars specifically, I just remember stormtroopers being really cool and lightsabers being really cool. And then somehow that got me into cinematography. And I realized later, no, I was more interested in the object and not the filming of it. Like I wanted a lightsaber. I didn't want to record it.
Wanted a lightsaber.
Yeah. And so, I built them myself.
We all are like, oh, I really want to live that dream. But the making of the dream, the thing, they say don't meet your star, right? It's totally different. Like you said, it turned out like it was the lightsaber that really got me. I probably you just needed one of those for your birthday. And like life happens.
But a real one, not a plastic one.
That's true.
I needed a machine one.
Yeah. I feel like the Astera tubes got us pretty close to that, but still it's not. It isn't. We know it's not. But yeah, redefining film in my childhood, I grew up in a world that I didn't watch movies. So what is childhood? I did go to the cinema sometimes, but when I went to the movie theaters, that I was like, whoa, what is this? I think we even went to like the big movie theater outside of town. Like it was Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon.
That's a good one.
It was Amelie, which they're bringing back out in theaters. Thank you. Which tells you how much the studios are scrambling.
I know, right? I'm happy with it though, because I didn't get to see that in theaters. I only saw it on DVD.
Okay, so Amelie and Notting Hill, the most perfect romantic comedy ever. And those were the three films where we're like, what is this thing? It's so perfect, yet it's fake, but I want to be all of them, mostly female leads. You could argue Hugh Grant was lead, but we know Julia Roberts owned her generation of film leads. So female driven big cinema films, and I'll say big cinema because I've discovered that it really is scale. There is something that when I'm this little person compared to the screen in front of me, scale gets me. It's what makes me feel my humanness and my kind of fragility. And it makes that experience bigger than my life. And so those are the three films that I was like, what is happening outside of my small town? I have to figure this out.
Well, that was something I wanted to ask because I also grew up. Well, I was born in San Jose, which is a very large city. But then I moved to St. Helena, which is a town of 5,000 people in Northern California. And I think that escapism, that scale that you're talking about, really was something I was actively searching for. Maybe because I had a taste of the big thing and then moved to the tiny thing and just was like stir crazy. But how for you was like the small townness an effect of you wanting to get out? Were you comfortable in the small town, or did you have that urge to like kind of explode a little bit?
I think it's complex and multi-layered. And what I know now, I have a different perspective of it. I still respect it deeply. But when I was growing up in Tip City, Ohio, outside of Dayton, where they call it a bedroom community, most people commuted to work. The kids went to the local public school. We played basketball or softball or track. And then in the summer, we also played basketball, softball, or track. I loved it. I just thought this was great. I had my bicycle. I would ride my bike to the barn where we had a horse. I would ride the horse. I had my dogs. The kids on my block, we would play together. Like, I loved it. I'm not sure if it was those three films or if there's just something ticking in the back of my head or who I ultimately am as a person now. There was probably a curiosity for like the wonder that I only know this world experience. Like, I only know what is quote unquote normal to me, but there's like 100 and some or 200 countries out there. What is normal to them? And what is them? And I had this desire to like understand myself by experiencing the norms of many other things.
Yeah.
And how do you do that when you're, 16 and your biggest concept is, so my town had one exit. When I did come to LA, I thought I had arrived and it was still like 16 more exits. I was like, but how is this possible? I don't understand. LA is over the hill and on this side of the hill and to the ocean. It was so bizarre. So I think you just start picking at it and picking at it and picking at it. And the films were one of the ways that got me to Ithaca College, which I thought could get me to LA, which got me to around the world. I've been in so many countries now, and I put myself in incredible scenarios that never would have happened. So I think it is something inside that was just sort of this curiosity that didn't have a language or voice, but had enough just kind of tapping that I just kind of kept going for it. And I'm learning even more today, that internal voice. Just, I would say very recently, I've noticed on set, I hear it and it's the gut, it's the intuition. It was like, I feel like it needs to be here. And I think it's a push in. I can't really explain why. And I have about 3 seconds until my rational brain takes over. And it's like, whoa, we have 15 minutes. We can't do that. We should probably just land it, be safe. And if I can just like intercept that 3-second moment and go with that little voice, I'm learning that's where I lose control, right? Because that's what you're saying. Maybe you thought like you were too technical side heavy because we are tasked with knowing. We have to know. But we can then, because we are hired for our knowing and our knowledge to execute, but this, all the decisions, we can sort of plant ourselves in that space and forget that, in fact, at a moment, very briefly, we can't lose control and, sink the boat. But we have to let go of what we know and just be like, oh my gosh, it needs to be here. I can figure it out. I know I can figure it out in 15 minutes.
It's I'm gonna have to put this on a t-shirt because I said it a bajillion times now on this fucking podcast, but I'll say it again. Emotionally correct seems to supersede technically correct almost every time.
Every time. Even Hoyt said that in your last interview.
Yeah.
It's like, it wasn't perfect, but it felt so right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's I think it's hard too to forget that, like, when you're watching a movie, my old producing director used to say that filmmaking is just making someone feel the emotion you want them to feel when you want them to feel it. And when you're on the receiving end of that and you don't know anything about the process, you're feeling it. And then when you have to make it, now, like you said, you have to be very technical and execute in a certain way. And it's easy to forget the feeling part, the receiving, what it's like to be on the receiving end and not know how the magic is made or whatever. But it does kind of bring me to a question I did want to ask of you, because I know you taught like a class on this. But like, what are some of the kind of most common mistakes you see with camera operators that, if they would fix these things, would maybe bring them to the next level, so to speak?
Sure. And right before that, I want to say with what you just commented on remembering the emotionality, I respect so much, and I look for that in directors, because as cinematographers, I am juggling the logistics and the time management. And I'm trying to remind myself to also be very present in the emotional experience that we want the audience. But I really come to respect when the directors are truly keeping us at that north and at that focus and intention of yes, 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 but this feeling. So definitely, that's one of the biggest collaborative pluses with certain types of directors is they bring us to that space before we roll, before we commit to rolling. Operating is interesting. I did not come up in training for I wasn't a first, a second, and a first, and learn from the operator, and then get a shot at.
That's a cute puppy.
It's like she's going to join our interview.
That's fine.
This is post-COVID. The family life's allowed to arrive.
Right.
I didn't learn in a sort of craft way. For example, I just not Jeff Haley. I just ran into a few days ago a legendary op Steadicam op, and it'll come to me. I have like name panic all the time, but
me too.
And I was like, the whip pan. I was like, you need to teach me the whip pan. I'm still struggling. There's an approach to it that I haven't learned through others. So if you can come up through working with the operators as their assistants and then getting that shot on C camera or B camera. I did come up in reality when the last writer strike happened and then the tax flights started happening. And that was a blessing as a female filmmaker, I believe, because in reality, there's quantity of cameras. And when I just came out of AFI, I had a lot of student loans going back to, do I go to film school or not? And now I'm living in Los Angeles, all the things about affording one's life. So reality took over in LA, and I AC'd for a minute. And then I started operating on like the wide camera. And it's just through trial and error, like Sherri tilt down, Sherri steady up. And it's just all public over a walkie. So you want to be really good because everybody can see and hear it. And you know that your images are being projected to all the producers. I think that when it comes to operating, I want to set my end point first as much as I can, and it's scripted. Where are we landing? And now let's build ourselves to the beginning. And that will kind of tell me, is this going to be a dolly shot? Do we need to incorporate some booms? How are we going to get there? Is it Steadicam? If I know where I'm ending with my frame, then I'll immediately start pegging the corners of my frame. Like your frame on the top left where I'm viewing it is the photo frame. I know if I had to reframe that, I could just lock that left frame in the top left corner. And then I would fit you in it immediately. And I could double check myself. The right frame is a little difficult because I don't know where your bookshelf ends. But I could just...
It ends right there.
Right there? Okay,
yeah.
Great. So and I could see on the edges, if you have the ability in your EVS to scale in your actual frame so you can see what's outside of it, then I would know, don't pan right anymore. I'm going to go off your set. And you don't want to do that. So when I set my end frame, I start notating my kind of visual anchor points. And then I work my way backwards. The other thing is if I'm an operator on scripted, it serves the DP that once we have set our frame, and in different levels of filmmaking or styles, the AOP can pitch the lens in the frame, or in different shows, maybe the DP sets it with the director. When I can, I ask for the viewfinder stick. We all have our apps, we all have our Artemises and our other ones. But as sensor sizes are changing and lenses are being built out of your garage, they're not perfectly lining up. It's somehow the iPhone or the iPad sensor, it's very close. And sometimes it seems to be right on, but in other cases it's not. So if you're setting your frame with a digital app, as soon as you can, get that lens up and get it on the camera and verify the frame, and then let everyone see it. Because once everyone sees the frame, everyone can go on their missions. So here's my frame. Now let's go to one and set it. And then as the operator, now my job on a scripted show is, while everything else is happening, get your stand-ins. Don't go into a film without stand-ins, no matter how low budget it is, because your stand-ins have watched the blocking, they know where to go, and you can work with them. I sometimes call second team my first team. That's who I'm working with.
Right.
And so you start building that frame as an operator for the show, for the DP, for the director. You are, through sensitive language, requesting things can move or shift, or do we work foreground? Do we need to be a little low? You are building that shot so that when the first team is ready, they come in, we do one rehearsal, and then we go. So your job is like orchestrating everything to that moment of perfection right before we all need to be together in sync. When I'm in reality, operating, it's as much about watching the frame in my eyepiece and then watching what's going on the outside of my eyepiece. And it's also about knowing who I'm shooting with. So on this show, we are two camera teams. So I'm shooting with me and one other operator, and occasionally we'll join up for 4 operators, depending on the number of people. And I've worked with this operator before, Dan Cavanaugh, and I know how he shoots it. You know Dan Cavanaugh, great.
I heard of him, yeah.
He's a brilliant op. He's an amazing photographer and cinematographer. His eye is undeniable. And one of the beautiful lessons and the gifts for me to working with Dan is that his incredible eye, and dare I not get jealous, but just be thankful. So now I know we have 2 people on set who are able to just compose and deliver something emotionally like present. And he puts everything he has into his frame. And so if I'm a DP or an operator, I only want to work with other operators and crafts individuals who put everything they have into the frame and really make it important. I think sometimes in our industry, we can become jaded, just exhausted, just not feeling well. And if you could just muster up everything you have to say that this thing I'm doing right now in this frame is so important, everyone starts believing it and bringing all of this. So knowing who you're operating with, in reality, knowing also what's going on around you. Very, very technically, if I'm on the left, that means that I'm blind to my right side. So I need the camera operator on my blind spot to sort of communicate back to me what they have, or if they're going to shift, or what line. Like I can't see them. And, but knowing if I'm the one who can see the other camera, I just need to kind of feed off of them. They don't know where I'm at. So if they're shifting, I'll shift. So it's sort of you have to be very conscious of all the lenses in play, the operators where they're at, and then also what I'm filming, but what is also happening. And another big part of that, whether it's scripted or not scripted, is to wear comms or wear the earpiece IFB that allows you to hear the actors. Even sometimes if I'm 3 feet from them, I will still put the earpiece in because there's something that makes that their language just right inside my head that focuses me in even more acutely.
Yeah, there's it's funny, the 2 non-DP jobs that I think make you a better DP are editing and acting. And I've never actually said the acting part, but
Tell me.
Well, just because, like you said, like having them in your, it's especially for reality, I imagine, reacting to things naturally and in a way that tells the story visually involves some amount of actor brain, knowing where to place yourself in a scene as a third party, whether that be as part of the scene or, a neutral observer or whatever. That all takes kind of actor brain. But editing specifically, just to know what kind of shots you need and don't need.
And I think too, for me, there's so much prep, but for me, like when we're making a movie, it happens during the actor read-through, or it happens in reality when I get on set with the cast, and I just, before we roll, just start watching and listening and observing them. I heard a DP say, a little while back, like the location will tell you how to shoot it. So I'll make all my plans, all the location scouting, all my light paths, sun paths, or whatever. And ultimately, I just need to like sit back. The location will tell me how to film it. Now I know if I can, work with that. And I find that true with actors and with personalities, non-scripted personalities. Right. They will tell me how, like, they make it come alive, and so they will tell me through just the performance or just by the charisma that unique charisma that individual has. So in that sense, I can find a type of instruction, right, or a type of direction from the acting for sure.
Yeah. And I imagine too, like having a background in reality makes covering comedy easier. Cause like with the Drugstore June, that's a lot of comedians who probably, I imagine, went off script from time to time. But yeah, talk to me about kind of like how you had to shift your approach to shoot something like that. Was that kind of like more than one camera? Were you just kind of hosing it down just in case they did go off, or were they all pretty on note?
I think similar to reality in comedy, which I learned, I don't have a lot of comedy in my past, is don't miss it. Don't miss the moment. Because that is comedy. It's a moment of realness in a laughable package. Don't miss it. You can ask people to redo it, of course, and the best can redo it. They'll find a slightly different thread, but they will. So Drugstore was mostly single camera just because of the budget. Also because of our desire to shoot in sort of classic cinema, close and anamorphically wide.
What was
way.
the lens?
We were shooting with the Panavision E series anamorphics.
They looked really
on the
good.
LF. They looked so
Looked really good.
yeah, they were so great. When I'm holding those E series, I was like, man, the filmmakers who have also held these lenses, what? Insane. And we were so lucky with the dates because I think we got the lenses like 2 days before shooting for our prep because they came in from our shoot and they were like, Panavision was like watching the clock when we wrapped, like, okay, we need them now. Yeah. Don't have any overshoot or makeup shots or whatever because you're not gonna get the lenses again. But
sorry, I interrupted you.
Single camera.
Yeah,
no, it's great. I love it. We were mostly single camera. I think we had 4 B camera days scheduled that we could afford. One of them was a steady cam, and some of them when it was just a lot of cast or a big day, we kind of needed to, like, for example, the interrogation scene, 2 cameras. Please let us not have to repeat that whole dialogue 10 times more than we have to. But with that, it was, we didn't cross shoot to get everything, but I think the actors knew when they were on. But it was like we allowed time, or Nick Newsom, the director, allowed time, and he and Esther were both the writers. We had some other comedians and producers at the monitor. And it was fun for me to witness it because you have these mega comedians on screen, and then you have the brains and, the little like fidgeting brains in the background. Everyone's pitching at the monitors in very respectful ways. And it's sort of like what wins. And then they'll pitch it to set. And then the actor's like, oh, that's cool. Well, let's run with it. So we did allow time in our coverage to do alternates, but the actual setup was composed and purposeful. And then when we, turn around, then that became more of the pitching session. I would say 80% of the film, 90% was on script, with some of those moments when you had some, like back and forth pitching with multiple comedians. Some playroom there, but it was pretty much scripted, which Esther is a comedian, and it was really pulled from some of her stand-up. So she being the persona that she is playing, I think it kind of was right on point from the beginning, for me, whenever the script landed already.
Yeah, something that I find fascinating about I produce a quick ad. I produce a stand-up show called High Note. And we had a different show that went for like 5 years, 6 years. And then this one just started last year. But, so I've met a lot of comedians, and something that I find fascinating about them, it is not a collaborative medium. Obviously, these are all coming from them, but they all, in the phase where you're like standing out in the back, having a smoke or whatever, just the riffing is fascinating to watch because they'll all tell basically the same joke 14 times in a row, but they just keep one-upping each other and like getting excited when someone says something funnier. Yeah. And it's like watching a writing something happen, but they're all telling the exact, they just change the joke. And it taught me a lot about how to be normal in social situations because you just do that. But
right. Build.
Yeah. But it's really interesting to watch them like, it's improv, but it's yes anding, but it's the same thing over and over. It's just a strange. I imagine it was like that behind the.
Yeah, it's curious to me because in order to do that, you have to give up a part of yourself. to let go. But then at the same time, you gain so much back by risking it not being you or about you, but somehow receiving someone else's and then merging it. And it becomes about the thing in between all the comedians, the punchline. And even though all the comedians are there, it's really fascinating. And going back to something you just said, you mentioned you produced that series. I think producing something and directing something has made me just more, I say, a better cinematographer, but just a more aware cinematographer. Putting yourself in other people's shoes just allows me to understand more like, oh, I know when I rap, this person's going to be up for 2 or 3 hours. Or, oh, I understand when they're asking about this, there's an intention behind or a need behind. Some of the most creative curiosity in terms of my brain and my experience are line producers. Like, what you do with money and how you move it and how you see dollars and translate it to the thing I'm going to step into in 6 weeks. Like, that to me also is a fascinating balance between, hard facts and logistics, but completely creative in a way. So when we're talking about like, we need this, we don't need this, what does it cost us? Do we really, what about this? Will that affect the production design? We could get another location. We could have another day. Do we need another camera? All of these conversations I find once I've stepped into other roles, I go, oh, wow. Okay. I know how to better serve you. Just as I'm hoping my operator really knows how to support and serve me in ways.
Yeah. Well, and also, I'm sure I guess like you just said, but you can more readily argue for things you need now versus stuff like, that's going to be a tough ass line producer, first AD, whoever isn't going to say yes. But I know I can argue this point because I've done that job and I know, what angle I should take.
I know that it might cost something on some other world. And so it's about me, like, we need a techno this day. Okay, well, we could either lose the car day, lose that. We could lose a second camera day, or production design's not going to get as much money. And so it just becomes me understanding this is such a larger ecosystem than just my gear in my department. The things I need absolutely affect what other departments also need. And it doesn't become about like just me kind of thing. Interesting also, like when the line producers or the production supervisors, producing supervisors start showing up at the end of the day, or like when you're getting close to meal penalty or wrap, and you think, oh man, they only show up. But also knowing that in their minds, they're deciding and trying to get all the facts to decide 15 minutes of overtime today going to be valuable for the show and not having it later. And so just knowing that I'm respecting this ecosystem of decision-making, that to me is like, it's a wonder that we make anything. There are so many decisions being made that affect everything and everyone.
Yeah. Talk to me about the lighting for Drugstore, because it's very kind of natural looking, but also incredible. Like, I wouldn't say stylized, but it does have that sort of modern panache, that you want to see in any movie, but it's not too dramatic. And then you've got, like sometimes there's some hard light in there that doesn't draw attention to itself. Very easy when you're mixing soft and hard to just be like, look, it's the sun, or, whatever.
The sun is here.
Yeah. But yeah, so what was kind of like your approach? Did you have any references, or were you just kind of using your own kind of intuition on that, or what was your approach there?
Yeah, I worked with our gaffer and key grip. Our key grip was Mark Beckerman, and our gaffer is Armando Basterio. So I've worked with both of them before. And so that helps. Step one, I know who I'm working with, and they're both very, very good at what they do. And so like a DP wants their operator to really know how to autonomously support, but move the movie forward in a craftful way. Mark and Armando can do that as well. And we use lighting not out of the ordinary. For our indie film, we ran with Arri S60s. We might have had a couple S30s on. We did the Astera Titan 2 package, as we all do nowadays, of course, with the pool noodles. We did run with light mats, which I'm seeing them less and less. We did have our light mats on the show there.
Is there anything replaced? So the tubes and the light mats, I think, are on every shoot, it feels. Are you seeing them being replaced? Not the tubes, but are you seeing the light mats being replaced by anything, or is it just like they're going away?
I just see them being replaced by more tubes.
Oh, all right, fair enough.
It's more tubes. 1 tube, 2 tubes.
Yes.
We're
going back to the Kino life.
Or Kinos, exactly. They actually fit in Kino housing. So we carry Kino housing for the Titan tubes. Sometimes I've seen and learned from a cinematographer, Anka Malatinska. So I adopted it. Thank you, Anka. She'll tape the tubes to foam core and then put the diffusion over top and sort of have and point them in. So it's sort of like a really mini mobile booklight. But so the gear.
Oh, I was gonna say. So so the back of the tube obviously doesn't have any lights on it. So she's aiming the tube into the foam core and taping it. So basically the back of it, or is there like a gap?
A small angle. So
okay.
The tube might be shooting across.
I see.
Foam, the bead.
Oh, that's really smart.
The other tube shoot across the beadboard. So you're just getting bounce light off of that foam of the beadboard. And then you can pick, do you want Hampshire? Do you want Hollywood frost? Do you want quarter grid? And then you can make it a 2-foot pizza box, a 4x2. And then you're just moving it around on battery power.
I'm stealing that. Thank you, Annika.
Steal it. I stole this from Anka Malatinska, incredible cinematographer working out of Hawaii right now. That's a dream. She's living that dream. She's been an incredible mentor. And going full circle, I met Anka at AFI. And she has been a most abundant, giving a slightly more experienced cinematographer to me growing up. So thank you for that. Those choices as being a benevolent, abundant cinematographer, human in the world for sure. So, we had Titan tubes, S60s. We did the light mat thing. Our grip package was quarter grids, frost. And working with natural daylight. A few times we brought in M40s for that direct sunlight shooting through the windows, like in June's bedroom. That
was the one I was thinking. That where she's sitting in the chair with the tacos. It's such a pretty shot. I showed up and I went, damn, that's prettier than I was expecting it to be.
And that was a conversation. We were like, is it too hard? Is it too obvious? Is it too bright? Go for it. And it was really close. It was really, really close. But that was a fun one because sometimes in indie filmmaking nowadays, because when I grew up, it was like 1.2s and M18s. So for an indie film to pull the M40 and a generator for the day, that was great. But as we've moved to LEDs, we've moved to sort of all soft light. And it's really tricky. How do you create that type of sun without it just being a big directionless or, it's probably hit our shoulder, but not our head. So they top diffed it. So you still have to shape all the light. And then which window was it going to come in? That one came in from, I think, over her left shoulder, more raking. We could have chosen a different window and it would have been more frontal. So this is, again, it goes back to those little micro decisions. We can all get a Nanlux now, a 1.2 on set, or a Godox, a Felix Q10. I think they all plug into the wall now. The fun thing is with LEDs, now coming up to the HMI world, we can bring back the sun. Basically, we can bring back the sun without a generator. But now it's having the craft to make it feel and look like it. We probably had straw on it as well.
Sure.
Just to give it a little bit of sunshine daylight. And then the other thing that makes all of this work is we finished Drugstore June at Photochem with the colorist Alistar. And that man is an artist. Yeah. That is fun. When Nick makes his film as his artistic talent and brings me on, and then I bring what I bring to it, and we're crafting with Panavision, but landing with Alistar at Photochem, his crafting of light, color, skin color, all of that palette that he brings into it, I watched in real time the actual process of an artist changing a film, putting their print on a film, and then the other creators being like, oh wow, that's actually more of the film than the film. That is when it's all working. So we definitely had that epic wild card when we partnered with Alistar.
Yeah, it's funny. I was at the Kodak Awards last night and ended up hanging out with like a few people who run Photochem for most of the night. Really, really cool folks over there. And also Photochem, one of the like original film industry companies that are like still around, So there's very few, like I think Photochem's the only company that can process 65. There might be more.
Oh, is it true?
Yeah.
Yeah, not sure.
They were saying like
yeah, I've been impressed with watching how they like continue to find ways to serve the film, to serve the filmmaking, whether it's digital or whether it's chemical. It's phenomenal that they have found it, and they're family owned, I believe, which is also unique.
That's cool.
Yeah.
How do you make a drugstore look nice? Because you'd think it would like the top light. It's just neon or not neon. Fluorescent tubes up top in a tradition. If you were to go to a location, all toppy, kind of ugly. How did you make it look nice?
Isn't that the fun question? Like if you see in your script, like office, corporate, or drugstore, or like doctor's office, you're like, oh, what's happening? Well, you pick and choose which lights you're going to turn on per the frame. Let's turn off those. We brought Armando had a set of color temperature correct fluorescent tubes. They're not like Kino tubes. They were Titan tubes, but they were film tubes. So we strategically replaced the tubes that we could, and the frames that the tubes in that frame that would be in the shot. So like that one in the background, far left, 3 grids over, flip those out. So we just took the time to do that. So turning lights on and off, skirting them if they are not in frame, but they are providing ambience, get them off the back wall, get them off of this wall. We only want them in this aisle. So gripology in places like that is a huge thing. Also, just not letting them just be on. What are we going to, so disk them, bubble disk them in the sense of like, don't just lay the diffusion straight across it, make it kind of scoop a little bit to give it some curvature and make it a little bit larger source. So there's that. It's trying to build in contrast is essentially what you're doing, and turning the lights off, diffusing them and gripping them to make them not spill everywhere. And then also you're adding contrast from the floor as well. A 6x cider or 4x floppy cider. Sometimes like if I'm sitting here, you might not know it, but maybe I put a 4x floppy, here and here. So I'm not just cutting the fill light, the bounce return off of this white wall. I'm also killing the bounce return from the white ceiling. So it's just working. Once you get the frame set, you go to work. And that's where you're like, oh, I need to turn off in your frame, turn off the room in the background. I don't need to light there. I'm going to light from this source over here, whether it's a natural window or an unnatural window. If it's natural, it's going to change. Is it direct light? Is it skylight? We diffused those back windows on the drugstore location. I'd have to ask Mark again. It wasn't 250.
I got 251 on this.
You said you went 251.
Yeah.
You want to go down like the rabbit hole, go into gripology and start like parsing out 250, 251, Hampshire frost, Hollywood frost, Hasselhoff frost, Opal, Hampshire. It's great.
Yeah.
So that was, and then you put an E-series anamorphic lens on, then you just rock that. That's really also how you make it look great. Picking your lenses are so important. I truly, truly fell in love with LF in anamorphic on Drugstore. And I'm just like, there's no going back.
Yeah.
Sorry, Alexa 35. There's no going back.
What's funny is everyone was really stoked on the 35, and then now that it's been in the hands of people, I've heard people going like, yeah, it's fine. And going back to the LF, like it doesn't seem to be hitting as hard as people I think it was more of a body type upgrade than an imaging upgrade, it seems.
What I see the biggest difference, which I'm happy you said that because I just bought an LF at the risk of everybody going to Arri 35.
I think
but
yeah.
It has dual. Yes, thank you. It has dual ISO, which I will tell you in the world of camera image making right now is critical.
Sure.
Absolutely critical.
I think the Venice.
You're just constantly the Venice pushed everyone there. And interestingly enough, it's like you can almost shoot it opposite, the high dual base for daytime. And if you can get away with it with your lighting package, the low dual base during night, because that's where the shoulder and the heel, the ankle, the foot, all those curves. That's where they actually show in their advantages. So Arri 35, Alexa 35, getting the dual base, and truly, as I've heard from Alistair, I haven't shot with it yet, but as we were in post-coloring Drugstore June, it was like, you cannot overexpose the Alexa 35.
I have seen that. It's possible.
Can't. So to me, that's a real curiosity. I have a showrunner friend who is shooting a non-scripted series on the Alexa 35 right now. That's fun. The fact that minis of different types can start making their way into the non-scripted world. I know Sony, because of all of their offerings, have really owned that world. The one we're on now, we're shooting the FX9s with FX3s with an FX6. Can we bring any more FX1s and 7s and 10s in there? Yeah. But Sony's really owning that for us because they're giving us options. But seeing the Alexa 35 start appearing, and hopefully now minis, if the Alexa 35 becomes the thing, then maybe the minis become. I know Amiras, I've shot on them quite a lot.
Love the Amira
competition. Yeah, you can't get better form factor than that.
Yeah,
it's so great.
And just I love that they've built it out to be an operator. I don't understand why cinema cameras have to be difficult. Canon has done a very good job with their cinema line of making it so all the buttons can be remapped, and it's you've got built-in XLRs and SDI and everything you need for quote unquote documentary. It's you still need it for traditional filmmaking. Why are we making Red? Oh, you need 1,000 attachments for this to work. It's why?
Yeah. I was so excited for the Red Raptor, the VistaVision. And then the first Raptor they brought out, it sort of had no XLRs or no internal NDs. And you're oh, sort of okay. I think the one they just landed now has both of those. But yeah, it's interesting.
The XL does, but the regular,
the XL, that's what
yeah, that one's better.
Oh, yeah, okay.
It's way more expensive. The Raptor X is just global shutter, which is cool, but yeah.
That's important.
Yeah.
Maybe not on the highest list of the macro view of cinematography, but it's important.
Yeah.
It is funny. You get a really small camera and then you sort of have to make it really big to use. I operated for Sam Nicholson, ASC last year, and we did the Venice with the tether.
Rialto.
Yeah, he had 2 or 3 cameras. We were on Rialtos. The thing was still, we had a competition. It was still 28 pounds by the time we built it out. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
And now you're getting
I think I still
backwards.
Putting it on. Yeah, I think I still ended up putting it on my shoulder, or I operate with a little cine bag, and I was it's a cine bag.
Yeah.
But Sony's fun in the sense that they're the Rialto. I was on the Shy. We had a shot. The director was like, "Can we shoot from under the coffee table?" Oh wow, that is great. Can we Rialto this, please? Yes, no problem. So Sony's beautiful like that. But there's something about the simplicity form factor of Arri that I also appreciate.
Yeah. I did want to talk, I know we're starting to get over time, but I did want to talk about Angel City for a second, because that's a gorgeous looking little series. And I wanted to ask you about how you light and shoot, I suppose, an interview, because those are some of the best looking interview setups I've ever seen.
Arlene Nelson was the director and DP of that, and I stepped in midway. So that was a show because of their shootings. They started shooting before they had a budget, and then it went the whole season. You can't film a whole season at that scale, so there were multiple DPs. But for me stepping in, and I had previously spoken with Arlene on a show that it didn't work out. So this was our first chance to really collaborate. And that's really fun to me as a DP, to work with a director DP. It's so fun. It is just there's just a knowledge and a respect for building a visual space. Like you said, those interviews are beautiful. And I thought, for example, the choices they made the Canon FD lenses they shot on. It's like a cousin or a sister to the obscenely expensive Canon glass.
The K35s.
The K35s, but they're very, very similar. So just, again, going back to that specificity, I can imagine the conversation. I would like to shoot on the K35s. If we shoot on the K35s, we cannot have this, this, and this. Okay, the Canon FDs. And choosing to shoot on prime lenses, also taking a risk. I think the interviews we carried just 3 primes, a 35, a 15, and 85. Knowing you will, so by limiting that opened the resources for others. When I came in, they were like shooting on light mats, but shooting bouncing light mats. So then the changes I made were, instead of smaller light mats, I brought in the 4x4 light mat. I think that's called the 8. And we tested book lighting it. And ultimately, if I have to go direct, I really do like cloth diffusion. So I would shoot direct with the 4x light mat when we had space through bleach muslin.
Through it.
Also, yeah.
Damn, I didn't know it had that much punch.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but we were pretty close. If you can get your lighting closer, then it's actually, the light is softer, closer. And if the farther you move the lighting back, it's actually harder.
Right.
So we could be softer, but with a thicker diffusion. We could be closer in a higher intensity, but with a thicker diffusion. And for me, I love the muslin because it's cloth. So it doesn't make the sheen on the skin. It's just sort of like a little cloud that just like lands on you. And we picked it. What I really appreciated is we spent time choosing our frame. The way that it was produced and scheduled, we had time. We would show up 4 hours before an interview.
Wow.
And then we would spend that time in the location. We want to look towards the windows. Again, is the sunlight going to help or hurt us in that scenario? If we can frame in the windows, can we wrap it visually to make that our key? Kind of like the backlight is the key. And we would pitch frames for an hour. And then in case that allowed also variances in the day. Did someone get stuck in traffic? Was there an accident? Did we all ride together? We're just calm. The other thing is when you can create an environment of being calm and space for discussion. And then we would pick our frame, and then we would light the frame. And we also rearranged the locations. We wanted it to feel like someone just sat down, but where they would naturally sit down is against a wall. Is it okay if we move the couches out? Well, if they sat down at the dining table, their back is to us. Does it look like they just pulled a chair out? We really, really picked at those details. And then you put an F-35, and we brought in a Flanders monitor. I also believe the image you're looking at needs to be as correct as, technically correct. So when we're at the Flanders looking at the image, we know we're actually making decisions that affect the final look. And then we just built it. We through every little decision, we built it. But book lighting, prime lenses, pretty fast, wide open, and really intentionally picking the frame and not overdoing the actual gear, maybe 2 or 3 lights for the interview. But what you did experience, which is I experienced on working with another director before, is setting the interview at a 35 and pushing the camera a little closer to the person you're talking to. That may be what you also felt, because in many interviews you will put the camera farther back on an 85 or a 50, right? Kind of compress it. But just the people we were working with were media savvy. They've been in the limelight. So having a camera a little bit closer, totally okay. But I think you feel that too a lot in that interview.
Yeah. So I do a lot of corporate interview type stuff that I try to make look prettier than, usually I show up with about 20 minutes to set up, if that. But you're 100% right. I have to put the main camera far back on I guess maxed at 72. And then luckily they don't freak out about the B cam being on the side at like a 35.
Yes.
They can't see it. But yeah, I do have to do that. I have to put the main camera way back, because anytime I've gotten close, they're always like they'll address the camera like, no, talk to the person interviewing you. Then they.
Yes. No. And if you can shoot on a 35 or a 24, visually too, as the background rolls out, it expands, right? You just like, you get to see the space they're in. And so now the space gets to be a part of the character story building. And it's telling you about, like, again, with your frame, you've got your, maybe the movies and bookshelves, but like I'm seeing parts of you in your environment where when you're forced to
your case
on that
open.
Your case is open. Yes, exactly. When you're forced to go longer, then you're forced to minimize literally the focal point of the background. You don't get that. You don't allow that space to tell you about the person. And sometimes you don't. Maybe it's an environment you don't want to feature, or it's kind of neutral or bland, or so you don't need it to. But whenever possible, if I can allow the environment to be a character that the individual is in, to me, that's always just getting so much more of an experience. It allows the viewer to be more active in trying to figure out who the person is instead of just limiting them. And so literally the eyes don't move. They're just looking at one space. Just so many ways to just activate on different levels the character person.
Yeah, that was, I can't remember who I was talking to, but that was like a piece of advice for younger filmmakers. Is like, if you're going to make, a no budget short, if you're a 20-year-old dude, don't shoot a movie about an 18-year-old girl in your apartment. No one will believe it. No one's going to believe she lives there.
So production is like, well, and it goes back, like, what is the behind the scenes photo on Oppenheimer where Hoyt and the camera are like this far from the actor when he's giving his big speech, and you're like, oh, that's why it feels that way. They're literally right there. Yeah. And I think sometimes as coming up filmmakers, we're just outside of that zone of intimacy or that zone of living, the characters, circle. And the more I watch the great DPs work, the closer and inside that circle they are. And I think that was part of what made those interviews on Angel City something special.
Totally. Yeah. Well, I got to let you go because I've kept you a little over, but it was fantastic talking to you. And
I really enjoyed this.
Thank you so much. And yeah, Drugstore June's awesome. It just opened, right?
It just opened. They had the premiere. I have to figure out how to split my body because I was shooting while we premiered, and so I missed the dream filmmaker experience of premiering at the Grauman's at Hollywood Boulevard.
Oh, but damn!
It's in theaters this week in LA, in New York, and then March 1st, it's available for distribution, rentals, and all that worldwide.
Oh, wonderful. Well, I will definitely put that in the show notes because it's a very funny movie, and I enjoyed it very much.
I will say, as a viewer, it's a movie that gets funnier every time. And to me, that is the magic of it. Like, I know the punchline, yet still it's even more funny than the first time. So that's a special thing about Drugstore, that even as someone like who can enjoy cinema, I really love that film for that reason.
Yeah. I will say the only thing that did make me like laugh that isn't in the script is the line where Bill Burr's talking to her and he's the doctor and he says, like, I would sew that mouth shut. You can see him being Bill Burr in that moment and try not to laugh.
That was totally one of those one-off scripted moments, right? We just said, go. When you have Bill Burr in the room, go. Absolutely. And that's why you can hold it in a two-shot, because we had no coverage, but it's just so perfect and unforgettable. No one will ever be like, oh, why were we in a two-shot profile, 50-50? Nope. They'll be like, sew that mouth shut every time. Oh, so good. Okay. Thank you for spending this time with me, inviting me to your podcast.
Frame and Reference is an Owlbot production. It's produced and edited by me, Kenny McMillan, and distributed by Pro Video Coalition. If you'd like to support the podcast directly, you can go to frameandrefpod.com and follow the link to buy me a coffee. It's always appreciated, and as always, thanks for listening.